Hello and welcome to the Repair Studio. If you haven't done also, please subscribe and like. So first of all, today I thought we've got this blue bowl, this Chinese bowl, which I've on a previous video have actually put back together again, glued and stuck. Now I've used some arrowdite with this with some titanium dioxide, and that's in another video if you want to look back on that. So today it's now all nicely dried, it's been cured, and we're going to just take off any remaining parts of glue, and we're going to fill them, all the cracks in and the residual lines here, with Milliput. And as you can see here, we've got a crack here which needs filling in. So what we do first is make sure our hands are clean, some protective kitchen roll or cloth on work surface so you don't actually do any damage to anything. And yeah, so what we need first is I'm going to use one of these craft knives. They're quite dangerous, and if you do use them, it's always a good idea to wear reading glasses just in case the blade comes off and flicks. You don't want that flicking in the eye. So I can see here that there's a couple of bits which do need the craft knife rather than just using the sandpaper. But first things first, where I've placed and stuck the bowl, there is still some tape on there, so we're going to take the tape off. Quite tricky. When you do stick tape onto any form of pottery or ceramic, always use a really good Scotch tape rather than sticky tape, because you don't want anything too sticky. Now here we are, I can see here there's a little bit of residual glue which has come out from where we've really pressed it hard, and also here. So we will take our craft knife and we'll just take that off like so. And I can see another bit just there, so we take that off as well. That's it, it's just come off nicely. Any remaining parts, if there's any more on there. Right, and then we'll look at the underside here, see if there's anything. Now I can see there's a tiny bit just there which could do, I mean you could sand it, but it would take quite a while. It's a slightly speedier process. When you do use a craft knife to take glue off, be very careful not to go too much onto your porcelain or your ceramic, because you don't want to start chipping bits off that as well. Otherwise you're making more problems for yourself. There you go, I think that's literally off. Right, so we don't have any more, don't think we've got any more glue there. Right, so now it's ready for the Milliput. So what we do first is take our Milliput. Oh, just very quickly while I'm doing this, I have actually previously with this sanded it as well to make sure that there's not too much, because again it was few residual parts. So I have used waterproof sandpaper, which does come in certain grades, the 1200 being the softest, the smoothest if you like, and then it goes up the grades, the highest 320, 180. So here for instance I've got my bowl, I've gone down the grades and I've finished with the 120, and then I've just done the last bits of this to make sure, you know, last bits of sanding to make sure there's no glue on there, which I have actually done previously on here. So without that, we'll now take the Milliput. It comes in 3 different colours, actually maybe even 4. This one is white. It does come in a terracotta, a black I think, and also a yellow. So it comes in 2 parts and you mix 50-50, and when you do, then it starts to react and set. Now you don't need very much of this, just a small amount. It's a bit like plasticine and it's quite pliable. Always make sure you wrap it up quickly, because once you don't want any oxidization in there, otherwise it's going to start getting hard. So we take another bit from here. You want it roughly the same size, so always, so always check it's around the same size. And then once you've got the same size, you would then mix it together. Again, take off this, wrap it up, put it away, so you don't want that drying out. So with this section, you can start to really work it in together. You can tell once it's worked in together because the colour is the same, which is a white. Before, obviously, on the blue one here, it wraps up in blue film, it was quite yellow, and on the white film it was obviously white, so obviously you've got the two different tones. But once you start mixing them together, you know it's well mixed because it blends in, it's all the same. Plus it's quite pliable, it's not too hard, it's nice and soft like blue tack. Now what we need to do here is take another tool, which I have in my... Now this isn't necessary if you don't have this, you could just use an ordinary flat knife, but I do have various tools here. This is one, it's quite flat, and then I should have another one in here. Oh, where is it? Here we are. No, it's not that one. It is, oh, actually is that one. It's this one here. So what I would do is we're going to scrape onto parts using, you can use different sorts of tools, you know, this sort of flattish here, have ones which are even flatter, and you just use, oh here we go, here's the one, very small flat. You can see on the end it's nice and flat, and so it's very easy to use. So we have our piece of Milliput. I think first of all I'll show you how to do the residual cracks, if you like, the bits along here, and then we'll just do this here, we'll fill that in ready. So what I would do first is I'll take just a small piece, you could go even smaller, and then if you can just make it into, sort of roll it in your fingers so it's quite long. Now I think you can see here we've got a piece here, so what I would do is I'll just stretch it along the piece here. Now you don't want it to protrude too much, otherwise you're going to give yourself a lot of work at the end. So I would then take my little tool here, as I say, if you don't have one, just a small flat knife, and I'll just work it along where the line is, the crack, as you can see. So it's a lot flatter, so there's not too much product, too much Milliput on there, and you just work it along and take some bits off and move it along even more so. Just want to get that filled in, but you don't want too much product. Now I can see a bit here, so do it along there as well, and I'll go all along the line from the crack. You see what you could do as well, I do have a cup of water here, so if you wanted to make it smoother, for instance, just finish this bit off and I'll show you, you would then dip this into some water to smooth it down, or you could use your finger. There we go, just do this section. So there we go, as I say, you don't want too much Milliput on there. Now it does tend to harden after, the thinner you make it, obviously the quicker it's going to harden, so this would probably only take a few hours, but really ideally you want to leave it for at least 24 hours to cure, to completely set and be completely hard, ready for sanding. Now here we go, as you can see, and then here where we had this, where we took off that large amount of glue, I'm just going to do there. So if you see extra bits, you can take those off, just there. And then I would work all the way around on the bowl. And once I've done that, I would then start on this area here. Now you can see this side it's not too bad, but from here you can see it's quite a big bit taken out, big chip. So what I would do, let's place it there so you can see. Again, I would take just a little bit of Milliput. You don't need too much. And you kind of want to have it the same shape as your chip. So let's make a bit more. There we go. So get that there, and then so we've got the bits here, and I'll just place it on. If your chip is very large, you may have to put glue on it first, some iodide glue to help stick, but when it's a small chip like this is fine, and you would just work it. Again, you don't want it to be protruding out too much, otherwise you're going to give yourself a lot of hard work afterwards. I can see, I mean, I can actually work some of that through to there. See, it needs a bit more there. You just work it. If you do find you need a little bit of extra, what you would do then is take another bit, this I only need a smidge, a little tiny piece there, and then I would just make it flat, and then just place it on top. Now once you've done that, I'm just going to do this last bit here to show you, and then I'll show you what I do after with the water. So again, using the flat part, you don't want to be digging in because you don't want to be sort of chipping bits of china off. It's, you know, in a vulnerable position at the moment. Right, so once we've done that part of the bowl, so I'm just going to see a tiny bit more there, you would then take your water, and I would actually just dip my finger in, and then you can just smooth it. You don't need too much water, you don't need it to be soaking wet. It would just help smooth that Milliput, and so it'll be easier when it comes to sanding. And also, you know, you can press it right into those cracks. So say you don't need much, and this is where having very clean hands comes in. If you do have any dirt in your fingers or your fingernails, it's going to go into and seep in, and it'll be very hard to get out. And then we've got this part here, which was the crack, so you can manipulate it. It's a bit easier, you can feel it with your fingers, and where it just needs a slight adjustment. And then after that, you can take some kitchen roll or your cloth, which is always useful, and then just maybe wipe it a bit if it's a bit too wet, like so. And then you would just leave that to dry. Now we've done that side, we do have the inside. Now again, I can see we've got some lines here, but also we've got a little hole there. So let's fill that hole in first, shall we? So again, we take our Milliput. As I say, a little bit goes a long way. I mean, one of these would last a very long time. Tiny piece there. Flatten it slightly, although I can see it's in quite deep and small. So you would then place it and squeeze it in. Just want to get it right into that crack. Being careful not to touch too much of what you've already done on the other side. Okay, and I'm going to move it with my fingers to where the other parts of the crack are. That's another technique you could also do. Just, you know, you don't always have, if you don't have a crafting knife or an implement, you just do it this way. So I'm just moving the Milliput along with my finger, and then again I could dip my finger in some water and just to smooth it down more, and that would, you know, that just softens it, and so it'll be easier then for when it comes to sanding. And then what I would do is, again, I would just take this other piece, and then I would work my way along to finishing off the lines, which again like that, and then you would roll it, Now I can see the line there. So placing it, I mean, it's quite good if you can have natural light, because you can actually see, especially if it's patterned, you know, you can see the colour better. And again, I'm just going to use my fingers along that line. Let's use that. All the way down to there. There we go. It's getting better. Never forget on when you do have a bowl to always do the top, because you always get a bit of a ridge there, and that's where it really does need smoothing. You always want to fill that in, because any dust and dirt, it's a bit sometimes people forget. So that's all blended in with everything else, and then I would just then finish this part and this part here. So there we are, how to fill in cracks with Milliput, and how to fill in the residual cracks, the very small fine ones. What I'll do now is I'll just finish this piece off, and I'm going to leave this for at least 24 hours so it can really dry and harden, and then it'll be ready for the sanding part. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Please subscribe if you haven't done so before. Please like, and I'll see you in the next one. Okay, bye.